Appreciation Week, and while all teachers deserve appreciation, there are always the special ones who go above and beyond and settle for more. Andrew Kaufman is a professor of Russian literature at the University of Virginia. After teaching a special workshop at an adult prison about 10 years ago, he had a radical idea for a new class. And it has been more successful than he ever could have imagined. Watch.
My favorite story of all was...
At first glance, this looks like your average college literature class.
Some of the greatest works of Russian literature.
But half the students in attendance are not enrolled in college.
You guys were selected.
They are inmates at Beaumont Juvenile Detention Center, about an hour's drive from the University of Virginia.
I didn't expect for us to be able to connect.
Professor Andrew Kaufman created and teaches the collaborative class, now in its 9th year.
I was invited to teach a workshop in a prison, in an adult prison. It was probably the most powerful classroom experience I'd ever had. And so I thought, what if I were to create a class in which I take my own university students and bring them together with incarcerated youth?
I got the poems, too.
With the blessing of the university and the Department of Juvenile Justice, Professor Kaufman launched the program in 2010.
The first semester was a total experiment.
One of the reasons...
On the very first day, I said, hey, we are on the Mayflower, and we're building the Mayflower while we're sailing on it to a destination that we're not entirely sure of. So we're all in this together. And what that did is just motivated the heck out of students.
It has been so successful, it attracted the attention of a documentary film crew. Seats at the Table was born.
I think y'all helped me realize that I need to go home and do the right thing.
And the effect the students and inmates had on each other was unexpected, but profound.
I want the best for you, in life, and I think you deserve a do-over, a restart.
The discussions went way beyond the assigned reading.
What was your first night here like?
I mean, I don't know. It's like no feeling at all. It's like a blank space almost.
By the time the class ends each semester, an incredible bond is formed.
Dr. Kaufman, I appreciate you doing this. And I'm one of the people to say that I'm going to really benefit on everything you taught, start using it. And for my group landing a hand, you should definitely give Sam and Rochelle extra credit on their final exam.
Professor Kaufman, welcome. Welcome to you. What a great idea. And this strikes me as one of those things where probably the UVA students go in there thinking they are going to give something and wind up getting a lot in return.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a lot of people, when we talk about the program, they think, what an impact this is making on the residents. But the UVA students, even to their surprise, are in some ways transformed by this experience. I mean, many of them have never formed relationships with, residents at a correctional center. It's a whole new way of thinking about literature, of studying literature, of having conversations about life through literature. And it makes a lot of them realize that they want a career with service. They want service to be a part of their career path. So a number of the university students change how they think about their futures.
It's funny because the guys who are inside the correctional facility, just reading up on you and watching the documentary, they all say, I didn't exactly think I was a Tolstoy fan. This wasn't really where I saw myself getting, my intellectual curiosity piqued. And yet in you march with all these citizens who say, give it a shot. And so what is it? What is it about Russian literature that bonds the UVA students and the inmates at this correctional facility together?
Well, a lot of the residents and even the students say this is, the Russian literature is daunting. I mean, they didn't realize that they would be interested in Russian literature. But the themes are so universal. These stories of Russian literature are about the very same struggles that you and I deal with, about family problems, about love, about loss. And they're told in incredibly entertaining and profound ways. And so a number of the residents have said, the messages of Russian literature, people have been telling me these, for years, about the importance of moral responsibility, the importance of treating people with decency. But the message would go out in one ear and out the other. But somehow when you put it in the context of a story, and you have a conversation about that story with your peers from a university, the messages stick.
And it's a two-way street, because I see in the documentary how they have stories of forgiveness. The kids from UVA say, could you Have you sought forgiveness for what you did that landed you in here? And the guys are very open about whether they think they deserve it or not, and this bond starts to form. One thing I wanted to ask you about was, what is this rule that they're not supposed to have contact with each other again for 5 years post your class? Is that
so part
the
of
clock
what
starts?
part of what makes this experience so profound and important is that it has an end to it. This is a 10-week relationship that's formed, and the current policy of the Department of Juvenile Justice is, and there's a lot of good reasons for this, but the policy is that volunteers cannot maintain contact with the residents for 5 years after the end of the program they volunteered for. And so what that does is it just lends an urgency to these 10 short weeks.
Well, why are they not allowed to have contact with you?
I'm not in a position to. This has nothing to do with us.
You didn't set the rules.
I did not set the rules. But part of the,
because you hear some of the students lamenting it. They form a real bond, and they want to continue staying in one another's lives by, pen pals or some other way. And I felt that for the students who were driving away, with their freedom, wondering about the residents and how the friendships could continue. And I want to introduce you now to one former resident at the juvenile facility. Josh Pritchett struggled to find his way as a teenager. Escalating bad behavior included assault, drugs, and gangs that eventually landed him in juvenile detention for an 18-month sentence. But it was what he realized when he was in prison that enabled him to turn his life around.
I've been incarcerated many, many times. My home really was a juvenile detention center. That's where I felt most comfortable. It's a very structured, repetitive routine. You're taking the essentially worst kids in school and putting them all together. I mean, even if they are trying to teach, it's very difficult to teach to that audience. There's a thing that takes place after sitting in a cell for a year, at least, where you realize the things that were constants before, education, access to information, are no longer constants. And in the gap that they've left, you start to feel a need for them, and you start to desire them. I remember sitting on my bed thinking, like, I really want to go to college. So when I got out, I found UVA, and it's like, oh, looks like a great school to go to. That's going to be my goal. I've learned the value of asking for help, and I thought if anybody would be willing to help, it's whoever this professor is that was doing this class that my friend took in Beaumont. And so I just Googled, found him, and I sent him an email. Would you like to help or at least meet? And we did, and he was very receptive and very welcoming. And I did get in. And I emailed him, and I told him, I said, hey, I'll see you at UVA.
Josh, welcome.
Thank you.
So you went from a troubled childhood, committing crimes, to community college, to getting into the University of Virginia.
Right.
Where you are what right now?
Third year in the McIntyre School of Commerce.
Think about that. It's one of the best schools in the country. So, first of all, you had a troubled upbringing. You've been open about that. Situation with your parents, were they present in your life? How was that?
Yeah, so it was a little shaky. I mean, I grew up with my mom. She, for a while, was a single mom, just kind of struggling to put life together as best she could and as best she understood. My father came into my life. I met him when I was 6, but I didn't actually go to live with him until I was about 10 years old. And by then, I was already wild. I mean, I was rambunctious, crazy kid. I was a class clown. I mean, all that stuff. But I was getting in a lot of fights and stuff already as a kid. And so he inherited kind of a big problem, which today I kind of recognize more than I did back then, because when I walked into his house and, I just started school, getting in trouble, and all I was met with was kind of like discipline, because that's all he really knew how to do. I didn't understand that he was just trying his best to kind of shape me and position me in a direction that would be good for my future. So
now Professor Kaufman helps you with the UVA application process, and you get in, and one of the classes you want to take is his.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Is it true you actually gave him a hard time? You wanted him to prove that he was actually interested in Russian literature, as opposed to just wanting to go back and see his buddies at Beaumont?
Yeah, I wasn't. A little bit.
It's a hard class to get into, and I wanted to make sure that he was interested in the class as a class, and all of my doubts were dispelled when a couple hours after one of our conversations, he went to the syllabus voluntarily, found one of the poems, and wrote me this incredibly thoughtful reflective email about why that poem resonated with him.
Wow.
And I didn't even ask him to do that. The class he hadn't even gotten into the class yet, and he's already doing an assignment.
But let me tell you something. I can do one better on that, because yesterday he's in New York. I said, hey, you want to see New York a little bit? He said, I can't. I got to prepare my paper. My final paper's due for Russian literature for your class. Tomorrow, this is it. Now tomorrow, he went to a coffee shop to rock. So I have to ask you before I let you go. Can the guys in the class just have through the weekend a week next? Can they have till Monday to hand in their papers?
You really want me to commit to that on national TV?
Would you?
Yes.
Come on, Professor. Don't we want him to have it till Monday? Do we have a deal?
They have until 11:59:59 on Friday evening.
I tried, Josh.
Okay.
Thank you both so
I'm
much.
quote him in that paper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All the best to you both. We'll be right back.